Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to react to your guys' unpopular opinions and hot takes regarding the brand new Black Ops 6 Zombies map, Citadelle Day More. I don't want to waste any time, let's just get right into it, starting off with our first take coming from Logan Olson. I love the Doppelghasts and the evolution line they implemented. I love how fast and on your tail they are to spook you. You can't really notice the similarities to the Amalgam at mid-game, and I think it fits perfectly with the story. So I agree with part of this, but I don't agree with another part. The part that I agree with, I do enjoy the evolutionary line that they have with these boss zombies. They did it with the parasites and the vermin as well. It's definitely pretty cool and interesting for sure. What I can't agree with is the idea of you not being able to notice the similarities with the Amalgam. I actually frequently mistaken them for the same boss enemy on this map. Sometimes I'll see an Amalgam from the distance and I'll think it's a Doppelghast, or I'll see a Doppelghast and think it's an Amalgam. Obviously, after a few seconds when it gets closer to you, you're going to be able to tell the difference very clearly. But when they're like grouped up into a horde of zombies and there's a bunch of stuff going on, sometimes I do get them mixed up because at the end of the day, they are very similar enemies. And I kind of would have preferred if these enemies were just already on Terminus itself and they were connected to the Amalgams on that map, and then on this map you were to have a completely unique boss that fit the medieval theme just a little bit more. Like, I do enjoy the Doppelghasts and their implementation and I enjoy how they look. I just would have preferred something very unique visually for the map, and I just don't think the Doppelghasts provided that, but they do provide a very unique gameplay element because they do work very different than any other boss enemy in this game currently. Next hot take comes from Jonah Prescott. The red floor traps are some of the most unique traps of all time and gives the high round a much different feel. So I would say I agree, even though I haven't actually gone to high rounds on this map yet myself. I have seen some footage of it and it is kind of crazy what some of the strats are. One of them does involve the red floor traps where you go up to it, you hold X, and then you just spam different weapons. And in this case, I believe the Sigma launcher is the one a lot of people are using, because essentially these red floor traps give you the Ring of Fire ability, which of course is not a field upgrade in this game. They essentially just turned it into a trap, which I think is kind of cool. But obviously if you use a launcher like the Sigma, you can just spam it against the floor and it's going to kill a lot of zombies. So that is definitely pretty cool. I will say traps like that are awesome. I think traps are one of the main ways for a map to feel more unique, because obviously traps are the main map specific thing, especially in modern zombies, because like you could look at Liberty Falls, they have the Aether trap, which is a really cool trap, and it's only going to exist on Liberty Falls. Same thing with the red floor traps on Citadelle. And I do wish they would do this for more things like score streaks, for example, and equipment even. Have some map unique equipment, have some map unique score streaks. Actually, technically Citadelle does have some map unique equipment with the incantations, which I gotta say incantations are really cool. There's no hot takes about them today, but I gotta mention them right off the bat because they are some of the coolest things any zombies map has done in a long time. Next hot take comes from M Hill. The swords should be harder to get. For the fire one, they could have done it like shoot the cauldrons with napalm burst, then take them to the sword. After you do all three of them, you then have to do 10 to 20 soul box, or I guess you mean like a soul box that you have to kill 10 to 20 zombies with. So I do kind of get the idea here. In general, the swords should have been a little bit harder to get, and I kind of agree. I'm okay with them as they are, but I do think at least one or two of them should have been a bit harder. At first, I thought the Raven sword was going to be like very, very hard, because obviously we see the puzzle there. We're like, oh my god, this is going to be like quite a long quest for it. But once you learn all the combinations for the puzzle, you learn all the possible ones, all it is just either memorizing them by heart or looking up a guide to see them, and then you just input it. It takes like 2 seconds. It's really not that difficult whatsoever. And then of course the step after that's pretty cool. Like, I like the quests, I do, but I do agree there could have been like one more step for each of them just to give it a little bit more to do for them. But in general, I'm okay with how they are. What I think they should have done though is had a second upgrade for them. And actually Ancient Evil does this very well, because Ancient Evil's quests to get the gauntlets are very similar to this map. I would definitely compare this map to Ancient Evil in a lot of ways, and one of the main ways is how easy it is to get the gauntlets. Is kind of similar on this map with the swords. They're quite easy to get, but Ancient Evil has a whole nother upgrade for the gauntlets on top of the first upgrade. You can actually do a whole side Easter egg that upgrades all of them a second time. Now, to be fair, the upgrade isn't that crazy. It doesn't make the gauntlets that much better, but it still is cool that there is a second quest you can go on to upgrade them even further. I really wish this map had that. I think this map would go from being an A tier map to an S tier map for me personally if it had that as a thing. Not something you have to do for the Easter egg or anything, but maybe have some quest that involves the incantations, maybe using the incantations for different things, and then you get some sort of upgrade beyond that. That could have been so amazing and would have made the swords a lot better, of course, because if there's another upgrade, of course they have to be even better. That would have been insanely cool. Next hot take comes from It Too Spooky for me. I think the size of the map is fine. It fits with the layout and flow of the map and helps the map itself to have so much more detail to it. The interior locations are so detailed, and not to mention even the exteriors are so well crafted and cluttered. Heavy Dead of Night feeling where that map was so detailed. So I do partially agree. I don't have a big issue with the map layout like some others do. Some people say it's too small. Some people say it's weirdly designed where it's like really tight, but it's long. I'm kind of okay with that. I like diversity with map layouts. I don't want every map to feel the same. I do feel like, although obviously Terminus is much bigger than Liberty Falls, both of those maps kind of had a similar vibe to it where it was just a giant circle and you basically just had like two different ways of getting across the other side of this giant circle. And then obviously Terminus had the entire water segment, which was a pretty big portion of it. But for Citadel, it feels a lot different because it's kind of like, yes, you have two different lanes leading to the middle, and then that middle branches off into two other lanes that go downstairs and underground and then kind of loop back around. And then you have fast travel that goes from both of those ends of the map to the other. And I think it works quite well. Yes, if someone dies on the other side of the map, it might be kind of difficult to get to them because of the way it's designed, but that's why fast travel exists. So I don't know, I personally like how it's laid out. I like how much detail there is to the map. That is true. I don't think it's on the level of BO4 maps in my opinion. I think BO4 is by far the best when it comes to detail. I mean, Dead of the Night is a great example of that. That map is insanely detailed, but there is stuff around basically every corner of this map, whether it's a perk machine, a wall buy, a mystery box location, something to do with the Easter egg, a side Easter egg thing, something. There's pretty much stuff all around this map. There's really no areas that feel pointless, and that to me is the best thing you can do with the map. As much as I love how big Terminus is, Terminus does have some areas that are kind of pointless. Some of those islands, there's like barely anything there, and it's just kind of there as a location for the sake of it. And I definitely think it's better to be a smaller map that's more detailed and filled with content as opposed to a map that's just big for the hell of it. Next hot take is coming from Vesper M. Maybe not unpopular opinion-wise, but impact-wise, the launch of this map for me was completely soured by the recasting of Maxis's voice actor, presumably because of the WGA strike. Julie Nanthanson is amazing and one of the most important parts of the mode in my opinion. Here's the unpopular opinion. If they had delayed the map and taken the time to resolve this issue, I would 100% be happy with that and not upset in the slightest. So this is a situation that is pretty frustrating across the board. If you haven't heard about it, they have been replacing some of the voice actors, specifically from the zombie storyline. And the reason because of this does have to do with some AI related things that it seems like Activision is trying to push into the Call of Duty franchise. And I'm not 100% certain on all of this, so definitely don't quote me on it, but I believe part of the contract with some of the voice actors is that they want to be allowed to use their voice to generate AI quotes for the characters down the line. It basically is a way to add even more quotes for the characters than what they already have. And obviously, the voice actors are not going to want that. Most of them are not going to want that for a number of reasons. First of all, they'll probably get paid less because they're obviously doing less voice acting if some of it's being replaced by an AI controlled thing. And secondly, I don't think actors are going to want their voice to be used with AI because it's not actually their performance. So you don't want people to judge your performance based on AI doing the performance for you. Like that obviously isn't something an actor is going to want. So what they do is they say, no, I don't want to sign that contract. And then they end up having to quit. And then they get replaced by someone who is okay with signing that contract. It is obviously just an unfortunate situation all around because obviously I don't want to see these voice actors getting replaced because they do such a great job. And I also don't want to see them being put in this position where they have to choose between their job or something they really just don't want to agree to allowing to happen. So yeah, it really does suck, but for me, it's not something that's gonna like ruin the mode for me. I'm not gonna stop playing zombies because of it. There are people out there who have said they will be stopping playing zombies because of it, and you know, all respect to them, but that's personally just not something I'm gonna do, and I really doubt most people are going to stop playing over this. Like I said, it is unfortunate, and I really hope it doesn't come to the point where they start replacing like everyone and they just don't do any sort of agreement, because I feel like there needs to be some sort of agreement here. There definitely does, and I'm sure they could come to it. But here's the thing, with your last statement here about saying they should have just delayed the map and taken time to resolve the issue, I just don't think that would have worked, because I personally don't think they're gonna resolve this issue, at least not anytime soon, or maybe never. Like, she might be completely done with zombies at this point, so them delaying the map to try to figure this out, I just don't think that would have been good for, obviously not for Activision, but it wouldn't have been good for us either, because we're just losing out on content that, I mean, we paid for this game, of course, and we're expecting to get DLC content throughout the season, so that obviously would have sucked for many people. But the overall point is that I don't think they would delay a map for something like that. Next hot takes we have here comes from DJAK. The Doppelghast is amazing. It's the first boss we ever got that isn't giga tanky. He makes up for it with his speed and kamikaze ability. This makes it so you have to change up how you play, but doesn't make the gameplay disruptive. This may sound as a glaze, but it could be top 3 boss for me. Interesting. I like how it's super easy to get the swords. Also, some of the upgrade quests are super cool, the fire one and the lightning one mainly. However, I do really hope there are unfounded double upgrades, because that would be amazing. Also, I love the bucket heads. They fit well with the theme, and I love the unintentional Plants vs. Zombies reference. So I'll respond to these one at a time. First of all, with the Doppelghast, I definitely don't think it's like top 3 for me, not even close to like maybe not any top 20 bosses of all time, but I do like them. I do think gameplay wise they are good. It's just my only issue is how similar they look visually to the amalgams. I just think they're way too similar. But other than that, they are pretty cool. I do like how they aren't tanky as well. And as for your hot take about the swords, I mean, obviously I don't think that's a hot take, wanting, you know, more upgrade quests, but I will say I don't believe that's going to end up happening, because there has been some leakers that have came out and said that in the files there's nothing related to upgrade quests for these swords. Therefore, there's probably not going to be any upgrade quests for them, unfortunately, which is a big mistake in my opinion. I feel like if they were to have put upgrade quests for these, especially if they were like separate from the main Easter egg, they were just like side Easter egg type things that you can do on top of the first upgrade quest you do, I think this would have been maybe even like an S tier map, because that would have added so much more replay value to the map, considering, you know, of course you can do the main quest itself, but if you want to do this other whole quest to get the swords to make them even better, like that would have been really cool. Ancient Evil did that, obviously. That's the best example I can give. That map actually had a whole second quest to upgrade them again, but you didn't have to do it for the Easter egg. So I thought that was really cool, and I definitely think that would have been nice. And the bucket heads, they are pretty cool. Next hot take is coming from iHemerald. My unpopular opinion is not entirely related on the map itself, but to the overall storytelling this game is going to. My point is that now that the Chaos and the Vanguard storyline are tied to the Dark Aether storyline, now it's making the lore a lot more interesting, even because Chaos story fans like me wanted so bad the return of the Chaos story since the cliffhanger from Ancient Evil in BO4. I know a lot of people don't care about the Chaos story, but I think it's time to let the Chaos story take a big part instead of the Aether/Dark Aether story, and I hope that the next DLC will be the same. So I do agree for the most part. I was one of those people that I wanted to see the Chaos story return in some way, shape, or form, and would I have preferred it to return like directly within its own storyline rather than being connected to the Dark Aether story? Yeah, probably. I think I would have preferred a direct sequel to Ancient Evil with the same characters and all that stuff. But here's the thing. We were never going to get that. Like, that was just not going to happen. It wasn't going to just magically come back into the game. So I think this is the best alternative for them, where they don't have to rely so heavily on this separate storyline. Instead, they can just bring that storyline into the Aether story, or I guess in this case, a Dark Aether story. And I think it makes perfect sense. Like, they're finding decent ways to make them connect. I am a big believer that you can really connect any storyline if you really wanted to. There's ways to do it. Like, people say, oh no, you can't do that, doesn't make sense. No, it does. You can find a way. They're writers. They're very creative, especially with the zombie storyline. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. It's been like that since the dawn of time. It's very much on the go, almost like fan fiction. That's basically how it's been since the beginning, and I think it works. I think they do a good job of taking certain elements, mushing them together, and just making an interesting and compelling story out of it. And they've already been doing that, and I am currently kind of interested in what's going on, but I think what matters more to me is not even just the story itself, but more so the atmospheric elements of it. And when you have the Chaos storyline involved, there is just 100% going to be a lot more atmospheric stuff going on, especially when it comes to the use of magic. That's a big part of Citadel Day More. It's much more of a magical kind of a map compared to something like Terminus, and I love that a lot, and I really hope DLC 2 does go in that direction. Of course, the current rumor of the map is that it's going to be at the Avalon dig site, which, I mean, obviously the end cutscene even teases that as well. So I think it's going to be almost like an Indiana Jones type map, where we're going to go into this dig site, and we're going to be going underground in some like ancient ruins underground of some sort. I don't think it's going to be Origins. I know some people say, oh, it's going to be Origins. I don't think it's going to be Origins. I don't think it's going to be any relation to Origins at all. Maybe a couple references or something like that, but it's not meant to be Origins. It just happens to be another dig site in France. I think that's pretty much the only similarity there. Maybe they'll have some references, sure, but I think it's more so going to be a Chaos themed map as opposed to anything related to Origins. Next hot take is coming from Odorous Flame. There is still a big issue with the aesthetic of modern zombies, or maybe COD as a whole. It's clear to see how much passion and effort is being put into these maps, so having such a lack of creativity from the UI is a big letdown since it's constantly on your screen. It's like the UI team has been phoning it in since BO4. Maybe it's just me, but I'm constantly wondering how much better and appealing the game would look if it had a unique zombies HUD to it. So yeah, I do agree. I've talked about the HUD 1,000 times before, but yes, obviously the HUDs don't look amazing. They've looked so much better in the past. Of course, there is ways to turn off a lot of different HUD elements, and although that definitely makes the HUD look a lot nicer, it still doesn't fix the core issue with the visual aesthetic of it just not looking that interesting. It still does have that problem. And there's also a huge issue in the game right now where a lot of people don't even want to change their HUD because it changes it for zombies and multiplayer. And if you play both modes, you're not going to want to change your HUD at all because it's going to be really frustrating having to change it every time you go back and forth between the modes. I don't know why that hasn't been changed yet, because that is an insane oversight that is completely ruining the HUD customization feature. And I also think some of the HUD elements that you can turn off, there should be other replacements for them. I mentioned this before with the score feed. I don't like the score feed being in the middle of the screen popping up every time you kill a zombie, but I do want to see it pop up next to my points like it did in the older Call of Duty Zombies games. I think there's definitely more work they can do with the HUD. Unfortunately, I'm not expecting a lot of these changes this year. I think this stuff is something that they can do next year with the next Call of Duty Zombies mode. Maybe they'll finally make some changes then, but currently I just don't think there's much they can do. They're probably just going to leave it as is. I just really hope they at least make that one change where they make it so the HUDs are separate from MP and zombies, so you can actually fully customize your zombies HUD without having to worry about it also changing the multiplayer one. Next hot take is coming from Lucas Muller. I think it needs more of the old medieval Citadelle vibes and less of the military radio station. Also, there is nearly zero Dark Aether stuff. So I do agree with the first point. I mean, I'm always going to say this. I do think zombie maps needs to get a little bit less of the military stuff and the, research science stuff. And we need to get more into that mythical stuff. Just at least for the chaos stuff, for sure. And this map definitely has a lot of chaos influence, but yeah, there still is some of the facility stuff in there, whether it's in the basement area or whatever it may be. I'm okay with it. I think the map is definitely the best atmospherically we've had it since probably Black Ops 4, but yeah, there is still some stuff like that on the map. That is true. But when you said there is nearly zero Dark Aether stuff, I am okay with that. I'm fine with that. I personally am not a fan of them, having so much with the Dark Aether in the maps. I'm totally fine with seeing less of it from now on. We saw it in Liberty Falls. I don't need to see it in every single map. I think it's cool that they're getting outside of the Dark Aether stuff, and this map was more so focused on the Chaos Story stuff and the Sentinel Artifact. Hopefully we'll go even further with it, where the next map maybe will just be a Sentinel Artifact trial. I mean, we can even get the mystery box from the Chaos Story returning, or the Pack-a-Punch machine, because that would make sense that those would appear with the Sentinel Artifact trial. I would assume it would, at least. So I think that would be really awesome. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I do kind of agree with what you're saying. I do think the less of the military radio stuff, the better, in my opinion. But I get why they do it. It's kind of hard not to, because why else are these characters going to these locations? Usually they're going to these locations because there was some sort of group there that was doing research or something. That's kind of what zombies has been since the dawn of time. I mean, even you go back to the Reisendrock, yes, of course, there was military radio stuff everywhere. There was research stuff everywhere. That's just kind of how these maps have always been. But I do think they do need to put more of the influence on the medieval stuff. And I definitely think this map could have gone further with it. Like I said before, having a boss zombie that's fully medieval themed, I think would have helped a lot. But also some of the rooms as well. Like maybe one of those research rooms, instead of it just being a research room with radios or something, they could have done something similar to what 9 does with its Danu Temple area, which looks so cool, where there's like dripping like green ooze everywhere that comes from something. And in this case, I guess it could have been, I don't know, something related to the red Ethereum crystals that were there, because I mean, you get that from the boss zombie to open up Pack-a-Punch in the first place. They could have had some of those like sticking out of the ground or something. I have no clue. But regardless, I think the map itself is great atmospherically. I just think, yeah, they could have gone a little bit better with it. Next hot take comes from Smallson TV. I really like that PhD Flopper isn't on the map physically as a perk machine, but there's an amazingly fun side Easter egg to get it. So I actually fully agree with this, and this is probably one of the most unpopular opinions we're going to see in this video. But yeah, I agree. I like the fact that certain perk machines aren't going to appear on every map in this game. I like as much map uniqueness as humanly possible, and I know they're not going to go as far as to have certain perks be fully unique to maps, because that's just not what they do anymore because of the Wonder Fizz, but at least having some machines just not appear, I like that. I liked that Elemental Pop and Deadshot were not on Liberty Falls. I thought that was cool. Of course, having a side Easter egg that gives you them is cool too, because if you really want them before round 25, you can just do the side Easter egg for them. And the same thing exists on this map. If you want PhD, you got to do the side Easter egg. It's a very easy one. You just have to hold X on 3 bottles around the map, and then you just play a little game with these zombies where you hand out drinks to them. It's a pretty cool side Easter egg, and it's pretty easy to do, and you get PhD Flopper. Like, that is cool. And if you just want to wait to round 25, you can do that as well, just to get it out of the Wonder Fizz. I like that, and I hope the future maps do that more. I don't really know what perks are going to decide to take out in the future maps, though. I'm trying to think, like, will they do Melee Macchiato or Vulturade? Probably not, because they're new perks. They're not going to do the core perks. They're not going to do Quick Revive, Juggernog, Stamina Up, or Speed Cola. I would be surprised if they took any of those out for any of the maps. And they've already done it to Deadshot and Elemental Pop and now to PhD, so that only leaves us with, yeah, I guess Melee Macchiato and the new perk Vulturade. So I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It would be really interesting if they took out Juggernog out of a map. I think that would be probably not a good thing, but it would be interesting for sure. Next hot take comes from Himbo Felix. The swords do not need a buff. They are great given how easy they are to get. Not every wonder weapon needs to be as good as the Thunder Gun, especially in a game with as many get out of jail free cards as BO6. I mean, I'm always open to things getting buffs, but it's hard to justify on a wonder weapon with infinite ammo. So I don't fully agree, because I do think there are small things that could be buffed with them, not huge things. I'm not saying to make these the most overpowered wonder weapons ever, but just make them just slightly better. Maybe they can kill multiple zombies at a time rather than just one at a time. I think that would be nice. And maybe making the recharge time for the special ability just a little bit quicker. That would be fine with me. Like, that's all you need to do, and I think that would be a decent buff. Obviously, I would like there to be a secondary quest for them as well, but what they could do is also just allow us to pack-a-punch them as well. Obviously, that would be really expensive, but I think that would be kind of interesting, because they did do that on D Machine in Cold War. It actually took them multiple months after the launch of Cold War to finally let us pack-a-punch the Die Shockwave variants, which I think they might end up doing that with the swords. But if they don't, I do think they should at least slightly buff them. But I do agree, not every wonder weapon has to be the most insane thing ever. I just think it's fun to have really powerful things in zombies, because if there isn't, what do people end up doing? They end up just using other strategies like the Mangler injection. And at the end of the day, everyone's just going to end up using some sort of meta that's like the best possible strategy on that map. So I would prefer that best strategy was something related to the wonder weapons. But I do think the best way for a map to work is the map itself to be very difficult, like the zombies are very deadly, but the wonder weapon's also really powerful. So they kind of cancel each other out, where if you have the wonder weapon, you're going to be killing the zombies nice and easy, but without it, it's kind of tricky. Something like Origins is a great example for that. It's very difficult without the stabs. Once you have the stabs, it's really not that hard. Next hot take comes from Green Doom. This is a potential top 3 map of all time. Might be the hottest take of the video. Obviously, I don't agree with this, but I respect it. I think that's really awesome that a brand new map is going to end up in someone's top 3 of all time. And I definitely think Citadelle will be that for many people. And it's nice to see, because I can't think of another map since Black Ops 4, since Ancient Evil, that people were putting in their top 5. I mean, Mauer or Toten, I saw maybe like once or twice someone put in their top 5. Not frequently though. Maybe in their top 10 I saw that kind of often, but top 5, that was rare. D Machine, sometimes a lot of people did actually really like D Machine. Didn't see that for any of the other Cold War maps or any of the Vanguard maps ever. I never saw love like that. Terminus and Liberty Falls, I mean, people like them, but I also haven't really seen anyone say they're like top 5 or top 10 material. Maybe top 10, but not top 5. But top 3, and that's like crazy to see, because obviously there are some insanely amazing maps out there. Obviously, the longer the Zombies franchise goes on, the harder it is for a map to get in the top 5. And I just think there's too many amazing maps from Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, that it is very hard for a new map to get that high for me personally. But Citadelle is in my top 15. Currently, I do think it deserves to be there. I don't think it's top 10. I don't think it's definitely not top 5. I will say though, this map is very close to being up there. Like, if you just make a couple changes to the swords being better, and I do think if the mechanics of BO6 were a bit better as well, like we had a classic point system, I definitely think this would have potential to be in the top 10 of all time. Next hot take comes from Leah. After what we got for the boss fight in Terminus, the boss fight on Citadel de Mort is quite underwhelming. Also, the electric sword isn't as bad as everyone says it is. The charge cooldown on all swords is a good thing in my opinion, due to the fact that the swords would be too strong without at least some sort of cooldown. So I want to respond to that last part first. I do think the electric sword isn't awful. I just think it's definitely the weakest of all the swords in this game. And then when it comes to the charge cooldown, I mean, yeah, of course, there has to be a charge cooldown when it comes to the special ability. You can't just spam that special ability again and again. It would obviously be way too overpowered. I agree with that. I do kind of think it would have been cooler if maybe the swords had ammo to it. Obviously, the main melee attack would be unlimited, but when it comes to the actual special ability, that could have been like ammo, maybe like 10. You have like 10 at a time or something like that, and you can just use them whenever you want. But for it to recharge, it will then give you more ammo over time, but over a larger period of time. Maybe like every minute you get an extra ability or something, or every 50 kills you get an extra ability. I don't know, something like that. So you still can spam them if you save up the ammo rather than just holding on to one charge for a certain amount of time. But regardless, obviously, yeah, it makes sense why there is a recharge on it. It wouldn't make sense to not have that. Now, when it comes to your first comment about the boss fight being a bit underwhelming on Citadelle, I have to disagree. I think it was a really, really cool boss fight. Do I think it's the perfect boss? No, there are some issues. It is kind of just a bullet sponge. You just kind of have to shoot as much as you can, but I like the attacks quite a bit. I like the attacks it gives. I think they're fun to try to fight against and try to block and dodge. And of course, when it comes to the phases that it has in between with a bunch of just bosses coming at you, it definitely is a boss that it'll take you a good 10 minutes most of the time. I know there are certain ways to cheese it, like with the power drill currently. Apparently you can do it a lot quicker. I don't like when there's ways to cheese boss fights personally, but I think it's a little bit less cheesable than Kraken. The Kraken from Terminus you can cheese in many different ways. There are ways to actually make that boss really quick, and I think that's what holds it back from being as good as the Citadelle boss fight, at least for me personally. But in terms of just aesthetics and the visuals and the spectacle, I think both bosses are absolutely insane. So I got to give both the maps credit. I think they both have great boss fights, some of the best boss fights we've seen in the Warzone era of zombies for sure. Next hot take is coming from Zero Stark. I'm glad they are continuing the trend with Pack-a-Punch being easy to unlock. I know some people want everything to be a quest, and to an extent I agree, but making more side Easter eggs, a wonder weapon Easter egg, and the main quest more complicated is more than enough in my opinion, and that's how it should always be with few exceptions here or there. So I can agree with some of this, but definitely not with all of it. My thing with Pack-a-Punch isn't the fact that it's too easy to unlock necessarily. I am completely fine with it being difficult to unlock. I'm totally fine with a map, you know, going a little further with it, making it a longer process. What I don't like is when Pack-a-Punch is something that you kind of have to look up a guide for, and only like a couple of maps in Zombies history have ever done that. Shadows of Evil is not one of those maps. Anybody who says you need a guide for Shadows of Evil Pack-a-Punch, they are lying to you, because you can easily do that without a guide. You just have to look around a little bit. It's definitely harder. It's definitely something you have to maybe actually explore the map a bit to figure it out, but you do not need a guide for that. But one of the maps that you do need a guide for Pack-a-Punch is the Shaolin Shuffle Pack-a-Punch, because that one you have to look under Juggernog to get a coin. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody in their right mind is going to search under Juggernog and hold X. That just isn't a thing people do. So I personally just don't like that quest because of that. I think it should have been something that you can easily solve without a guide. But when it comes to this game, I do like there being some sense of discoverability. I do like coming across things and being like, oh, maybe you use this for Pack-a-Punch. Oh, maybe you have to do this. But because they tell you directly on the screen of what you're supposed to do with indicators that literally show you exactly where to go, I just think it's too straightforward. It's way too straightforward. You can make it easy, that's fine, but why are you telling me exactly how to do it? Most players, I would say 99% of them, will go to that cannon on Citadelle and hold X on it. I mean, obviously, if you go up to it, it gives you the prompt to hold X on it. It'll give you that prompt to then now shoot it into the gate opening up the map itself. People are gonna figure that out. I feel like people aren't that dumb. Like, they just aren't. And once people do that, then they'll go through the map and they'll go through the doors as they always do, and then eventually they'll reach the big container thing. And obviously the shooting of the locks maybe isn't that obvious. Maybe you have to make it a little more obvious, but you know, people will figure that out, I think. And then they just have to kill the boss, pick up the thing, put it there, and boom, you have Pack-a-Punch. Like, that is an easy process for Pack-a-Punch. You don't have to give us these very, very obvious on-screen hints of how to do it. I feel like directed mode is what that's supposed to be meant for. Like, yes, when you have the directed mode, then you tell us how to get Pack-a-Punch, because that's what that mode is for. I don't really understand why that's in the main mode, but the general sentiment of Pack-a-Punch being easier to unlock, I'm fine with that. I don't really care. I just don't want it to be given to you so obviously like it is in this game. game. And then you also mentioned here that as long as they have a complicated Easter egg, lots of side Easter eggs and all that, then it's really not a big deal. And I do agree with that as well, but here's the thing. I don't really think this game has that. I love the Easter egg on Citadelle more. Don't get me wrong, I do love it. Would I go as far as to call it like really complicated? No, it's not on the level of like BO4 or World War II. I mean, it's a good quest. It's fun to do. It just doesn't have that same level of depth to its steps. Same with the side Easter eggs. Most of the side Easter eggs are simply just go around the map, hold X on a couple different items, and then you get some reward. They're really not like in-depth crazy quests that have a lot of stuff to them and you have to actually use a lot of your brain for it. You really don't. They're really not that crazy. And I think the game definitely needs more stuff where there actually is more involved steps that are a little more complicated, a little more interesting. I do like the Easter egg. Like I said, it's a good Easter egg. It's definitely the best one of the Warzone era, but I don't think it's quite there on the level of something like, you know, 9 or Garad Crovey or whatever it may be. Any map that you can think of that has like a lot of stuff to it, whether it's side Easter eggs and the main quest having a lot of steps with a lot of intricate steps. That is kind of what I want to see return. This map is definitely a huge step in the right direction though, so that's definitely a good thing. I do like the Easter egg quite a bit. I got to make that very, very clear. Next hot take comes from Cheeks70. Love the name. The Easter egg is close to perfect, but my only gripe with it is that the elements of the swords aren't really used in the Easter egg. There hasn't been a map with the 4 elemental wonder weapon design that has actually used the elements within the steps of the egg. I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about like just using the weapons itself with different steps. You say specifically elements, so maybe you mean like the actual elements of the weapons that you're using are like utilized in the step. I'm not really sure exactly what the wording means, but in terms of just using the weapons, I mean, we've definitely seen that before. Obviously, Ancient Evil is a great example. You do have to use each of the gauntlets for specific steps. And even when it comes to the elements themselves, I mean, technically like the Ra step, for example, on Ancient Evil, when you have to stick the Gauntlet of Hemera on the hand of the Ra statue, you actually are kind of using the elements of that wonder weapon there. I would say personally, I think most of the steps are doing that in that game. And I would argue this is also the case for Citadelle more, because when you think of the trials at the end of the Easter egg, each of those trials are directly related to each of the elements, and you can actually use anything within that element for that step. For example, with the fire step, where you have to get certain kills with fire things, you don't have to just get kills with the special ability from the fire sword. You can also get kills with other fire related things like Molotovs. I believe so, but you could definitely do it with the incantations, that's for sure. So I feel like the incantations themselves are already utilizing the elements in different ways. So I kind of like that personally. I think that's interesting. I would say they do use the swords elements in the Easter egg. Maybe not as much as they should though. I definitely agree there that they could have utilized them more. They could have done more with them. Unless I'm completely misreading your comment, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. But if I'm reading it correctly, I will say I think they do utilize them here, and I think they have before, just, you know, maybe not as much as they should be. Next hot take comes from KitKat. Wonder weapons are so underwhelming that it takes the map from an A tier to a C tier. Damn, okay, that is quite a drop off from an A tier to a C tier map because the wonder weapons are underwhelming. I don't think I've ever done that for a map personally where the wonder weapons made it shoot down that low. I can only think of one map that I really, really love, but the wonder weapons aren't that great, and that would be Call of the Dead. Call of the Dead's wonder weapons are not great. Obviously, the VR11 and the Scavenger, just very, very meh wonder weapons, but I still love Call of the Dead. It's still my favorite pre-Blundell era map. But I do get it, because obviously nowadays the wonder weapons are a huge part of the map. I mean, they've always have been, but I feel like there's so much emphasis on them because they're one of the main map unique elements for each map. So if the wonder weapons aren't really good, then people are going to get a little underwhelmed with them. But even just beyond the fact that maybe these weapons aren't as good as they should be, they still are really cool. I mean, you can't deny that they look amazing. Like, they look absolutely awesome, and they sound really cool, and I do think the quests for them are pretty cool as well. They even have their own theme music to each of the swords. I don't know if you guys knew that, but if you look in the album, they have specific theme songs for each sword saved in the album, which is awesome. And obviously the music is in the map as well during the quests for each of them. But I just think that's so freaking cool, man. Having like music for each sword, that's so much personality added to these wonder weapons because of that. Do I think they need a buff? Yes. But at the end of the day, I think they still are pretty good. They're definitely useful. They're not like terrible. And I think they're also really cool to look at. Next hot take here is coming from Granta Berthany. Treyarch does not care about the high round community whatsoever. This map's high round strategy is the exact same as the first 2 maps, mutant injection spam, missed out on a huge opportunity with the swords. So I haven't seen like all of the strats, but I have seen some strats that don't involve mutant injection and they involve the traps instead, but I could be completely wrong. I have no clue. But I'm gonna respond to your hot take with one of my own hot takes. I think high round has sucked in pretty much every single map of all time. Okay, a bit of an exaggeration, but I personally just don't find high rounds to be that interesting in Call of Duty Zombies. I really don't. I've never really had a great time going around 100 on any map. I've done it before, but it always just feels repetitive. By like round 60, I'm bored of it. I want to stop playing. That's usually how it works, because to me, the Zombies formula, it works when you're doing unique things. If you're just sitting there doing the exact same thing, I go insane. That's why I'm an Easter egg guy. I like doing Easter eggs. I like doing side Easter eggs because they give me a specific task that I can work towards. It's an optional task. You don't have to do it, but it's a task that is fun, rewarding, gives me something to do. And if I'm just going to play casually and I'm not going to be doing any quests, I'm probably just going to stop around 30, around 40 and call it a day. I'm not going past that, because to me, it just gets so boring after that. It's so repetitive. It's the same strategy you have to sit there doing because your guns don't do any damage. It's just so boring. I just don't think they've ever nailed high rounds for me personally. Maybe Shinonuma World of War is the only map I can think of that I genuinely had a decent time doing it, only because it took less than 2 hours. Like, that's the only reason I enjoyed Shinonuma's around 100. It's because it was so quick. But pretty much all of them are just these same repetitive things. I can't get into it personally. I really can't. I'd much rather try to speedrun Easter eggs, which I've only done for a few maps before. That sort of side of Zombies is way more interesting to me. Sitting there for like hours upon hours is just, oh my goodness. But I respect the people who do love high rounding, because I think it is a very interesting thing. I just personally just don't get any enjoyment out of it. So this map, in terms of this map maybe not being great for high rounding, to me it's the same for every map. I don't know. I just don't really care to go for high rounds. Like I said, round 50 is good enough for me. Maybe one day I'll go to round 100 on Citadelle more, but I'm not really interested in doing it right now, especially if people are telling me it's not a good high round, then maybe I shouldn't do it. Next hot take comes from The Walking Endless. This map is not in the top 5 best Zombies maps everyone is making it out to be. It's not a bad map by any means, but it's literally just an alright map. Also, I'm personally tired of the recycled enemies in each map. So I personally don't think a lot of people are putting it in their top 5. I saw a couple people say that, but I didn't see like that many people saying it. I saw more people saying top 10 maybe, but top 5, I really haven't seen that many people. But I definitely agree, it's not a top 5 map. It's not even a top 10 map. I think it's top 15. But top 10 is a bit much. I mean, there's so many great maps in Zombies, so it's kind of hard to get into the top 10. But I do agree with the whole recycled enemies thing. That is one of my biggest complaints with this map. I really didn't want to see the vermin, the parasites, and the amalgam all return to this map. The map would have been a lot better if it just had the Doppelghasts and then maybe like Hellhounds as the boss enemy. I know, yes, technically Hellhounds are also recycled, but they're not recycled in Black Ops 6. They haven't been in Black Ops 6 yet, so it would be new to Black Ops 6 at the very least. I would have preferred that personally, and honestly, I hate the mimics, but I would have preferred those over the amalgam. They basically do the same thing as the amalgam, but at least the mimics would have been unique to this map in Black Ops 6 itself, because they haven't been in Black Ops 6 yet. Well, they haven't been in Zombies. They're technically in the campaign, weirdly enough. Next hot take is coming from Landry Room. Got bored of the map after just a couple times. I think it's because I played so much BO6 and I'm truly not feeling the systems in this game. Elemental swords are also underwhelming and too complicated for my casual friends. So the whole getting bored of the game, I guess if you don't like the mechanics, that's honestly fair. It's just kind of how it's going to go for any game if you don't like the mechanics, which I do think is an interesting thing about Call of Duty Zombies, is that no matter how good the maps could be, if you don't like the core mechanics, it's going to be a problem. We obviously saw that with Black Ops 4 more than anything. So many people just could not get into the maps in that game because they didn't like the core systems, which is why I'm a big fan of the core systems changing map to map. Like, I think it would be really fucking cool if we just randomly got a map that just decided, you know what, this map's not going to have the loadout system. Like, this map's just going to have a starting pistol instead, and you just can't use your loadout weapon whatsoever. Or maybe you can unlock your loadout weapon by doing something on the map. Something like that. I think that would be really damn cool. The only game I can think of in Zombies history that has really gone far with changing mechanics map to map was honestly Black Ops 2. And obviously that was because the maps were very much split between the Blundell style maps and Zelensky style maps. And those maps were very different from each other. The Zelensky maps, obviously stuff like when you're building different things with the crafting tables, you can only hold one part at a time, whereas on Blondell maps, you can hold as many parts as you want at a time. Those are very different mechanics for the exact same game, and I like that. It gave different feels per map quite a lot. I think Black Ops 2 does like map uniqueness probably the best out of any game, but you go to later games, it's very, similar map to map in terms of mechanics. Obviously, if they're good mechanics, it's really not the end of the world, but I think it's nice to have some changes here or there just to try new things, and I think something like the loadout system would be a pretty interesting place to just decide to change the mechanics for a map just randomly. And the last hot take is coming from Zombies Key. I think the Easter egg carries the map experience. Otherwise, it's not that great. The map layout sucks. It's a very long map, not a big circle like most maps, so the flow is kind of meh. And the fast travel doesn't really help because they're not fast at all. So to their first point about the Easter egg carrying the map experience, for me, the Easter egg is like 80% of a map anyways, so that's not really a big deal to me. If the Easter egg carries it, that's totally fine. That means I'm probably gonna end up liking the map. There's really no examples of maps out there where I love the Easter egg but don't like the map. I can't think of a single map like that. There are maps where I don't love the Easter egg but I like the rest of the map. That happens, but in terms of loving the Easter egg and then not like the map, that rarely happens. That's like not a very common thing. And there are other points. We already kind of talked about map layout before. I personally like the map layout. I don't think it's as bad as you're making out to be, but I definitely kind of respect the opinion because it is very different than what a lot of maps usually are like. It obviously does take a while to get from one end to the other, so if you have to revive a teammate, it can take a while. And when it comes to the fast travel, like you said, sometimes they're not very fast. That is true. Like the cannon, for example, the cannon takes so long to actually get yourself in the cannon. Sometimes I think it's faster just running to the spawn room. Like I think taking the cannon is honestly just for the spectacle of it. It looks cool, but is it really that fast? It really isn't. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you have to think. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out, everyone.